My name is Judy Willcocks, and I'm the head of Museum and Study Collection here at Central St Martin's. And I guess I'm the only speaker on the panel that is an archivist or curator in the really traditional sense. So the museum at Central St Martin's is an accredited museum, and my background is not as an archivist, it's as a museum curator. But like lots of museum curators, I look after archives. You know, call us one thing, call us another. We're all very much preoccupied with acquiring material and ordering it and making it accessible in some way. So the museum here at Central St Martin's grew from a teaching collection that was put together by the first principal of the Central School, William Richard Letheby, and he was gathering in a collection for the art school things that he believed would be useful or inspiring for students. And that collection was put together from the late 1800s. We don't do that anymore. Letheby had a budget of between £100,000 and £200,000 a year to go and buy lovely things like German film posters or Japanese prints. Unfortunately, I don't have that kind of budget, and we've decided that it's much more sensible to leave it to institutions like the V&A to collect the wider picture. So more recently, we've been concentrating on collecting work by people who have a direct connection with the college. And since 1989, we've been buying work deliberately from degree shows every year. So that is a really interesting archive in itself, because we sometimes manage to capture rising stars, but more often it's about recording the zeitgeist, you know, the kind of work that's being produced by a body of students. But most importantly, for talking this evening, the museum also acts as the college archive. Now that's pretty scary for me, because I was interviewed as a museum director and employed as a museum director, but over the last 5 years, I've come to realise that actually we're also acting as the college archive, and that is equally, if not more important than the work that we're doing around more traditional objects. I feel it's a really huge responsibility for one person with very few resources. And we'll come on to this when we talk later on about the digital, but my goodness, it was complicated enough when I was just rescuing photographs from filing cabinets in people's offices as they retired. But trying to deal with digital asset management in a rapidly evolving world and the sheer quantities of material that involves, well, that's a whole different ballgame. But for me, working with an archive, I guess the way that my work differs from some of the other speakers, that I'm interested in how archives can support learning and teaching. Not just in an organisation like Central St Martin's, but further afield. But as I'm accepting the Queen's shilling, I guess Central St Martin's has to be my main area of focus. Object-based learning is the emerging academic discipline. Now, people working in an art school will say we've been doing this for all of our lives, but in terms of actually calling it object-based learning and really deliberately studying what magic it is that occurs when a student engages with an object. It's a fairly recent discipline. The phrase object-based learning was coined by an academic called Paris in 2002. And one of the few people who's actually working and writing on this at the minute is somebody called Helen Chatterjee, who's based at UCL. And it's her belief that university museums are outstanding resources and afford a unique opportunity for effective object-based learning, the dissemination of subject-specific observational, practical, and other transferable skills. So for me, that means I do two things with object-based learning. I look at the objects, so that's about exploring material culture, about reading the objects themselves. But it's also about using the practice of archiving and curating from the archive and sharing that with students. So it's that business of transferable skills. It's both getting people to look at, to read the objects, and to think about some of the practices around looking after and interpreting objects. So lots of things that are brilliant about learning through objects, and I think particularly in an art and design environment where most of our students, I mean, the CCC course is a sort of a theoretical course, but lots of our students are actually going away from their experience in the museum and making something tangible, so making an object of their own. And I don't want to read through all these, but lots to do with engendering discussion and debate. Lots of responses from students to say we are creative students, we are a visual people. So learning through doing, learning through handling, learning through the visual is a really good way for us to memorise things and understand things and synthesise disparate concepts. And for me, working with archive material, it really shows respect for the students. So we are a handling collection, a research collection. It's not locked away behind glass. It's there for students to touch and to feel and to work with, which is, I think, a really important part of what you should be doing with the university collection. So there's a whole bunch of stuff that we do to share the archives. So at the most basic level, we're doing introductory sessions. So that might be getting out a whole bunch of textiles for textile students, to be really overly simplistic about it. But we have such an incredibly rich collection here at Central St Martin's. And this is our Professor of Typography, Phil Baines, who's looking at really fine examples of lettering design with his Type Special Interest group. That's a bunch of geeks, if ever I've met them. So our collection goes right back to manuscripts from the 1400s. So illuminated manuscripts, handwritten, through early printed books, right up to work that's being created by people in the present day. And so we run sessions really regularly where we get material out, we take it into the studios, we run student projects where they really engage with the material, photograph it, write about it, curate it. We're also there to support research in the college. So this is some material that was used recently by a PhD student who was specialising, again, in typography. I don't know why I must be feeling in the mood for typography this week. Perhaps I should have chosen some better. We have lots of other lovely things, but typography seems to be top of the game at the minute. And we've discovered that in terms of working with students and with objects, it's actually much less successful to do the general show and tell. So I could pull out a selection of things that would really make you gasp. You know, Alexander McQueen, evening dresses, 13th century illuminated manuscripts, amazing things. But if I have a group of 20 students, they'll come in and they'll ooh and they'll ah and they'll say that's amazing. And then they'll go away and I'll probably never see any of them ever again. And we've discovered that in terms of really breaking down the barrier between the archive and the student is to get them to do something with the material. And if we run a student project, the holy grail is that we get those to be included in the curriculum, because then students have no choice but to take part. But we normally find that if we have a group of maybe 15 students who do a project, so they take the archive and they do something with it, whether that's curatorial or creative, that of those 15 students, maybe one or two will really get it, penny will really drop. And if we can get them earlier on in their career at Central St Martin's, it means over the course of their study, they keep coming back, they keep engaging with the archive, and they keep using it. And one of those projects, one of the most successful projects, was, of course, the FACS project, which Alison introduced when she talked earlier. And this is a group of the MA students who came to work on what I like to think of as a live archiving project. So archives tend to lock away uncatalogued material. Traditionally, we don't let people near uncatalogued material because we have no way of letting you know what's in the boxes. We have no way of monitoring what you're taking out of the boxes and whether everything's going back and in the right order. We are very, very OCD in the archive community. We like everything to be ordered because that's what lets us provide access to the collections. But knowing that this was a group of mature students who could be trusted to handle material, we ran a live archiving project with a group of previously uncatalogued material. So a group of 17 students were able to take this material, order it, do basic box listings, interrogate it, and then create an exhibition from it. So some of the feedback from that project was the students felt that this was properly high stakes. You know, it wasn't something that was manufactured, it was very real. This was archive material that was not out there, that was locked away, that nobody was going to see or hear about unless they did something with it. And for us, one of the huge benefits was I had boxes of stuff. I had no idea what was in it. And at the end of the project, I have a lovely ordered collection. We know a lot more about the FACS course, the Fine Art Critical Studies course that the archive represents. The students went out and contacted people who taught on the course, and they gave us more archive material, which we then included with the stuff that we already had. So we well, we got a number of benefits from the project, and it's something that we'll be doing again with the next cohort starting in January. And this is a photograph of the exhibition that the students produced. So they were playing with this idea that facts were the initials of the course, but they wanted you to kind of peer in through the initials and explore these boxes that they'd built behind. So I guess of all the 5 speakers, I'm the most prosaic and traditional, and I feel kind of like the poor relation coming along at the end when everybody's talked about these terribly exciting projects. But I guess I get to be exciting whenever I interact with people like this curating course who are taking the archive and making it something more. Thank you.